Good morning. The Joint Select Committee on Land and Physical Infrastructure's 15th meeting is hereby reconvened. This is the second public hearing of the Joint Select Committee on Land and Physical Infrastructure pursuant to the committee's inquiry into the Public Transport Service Corporation, with specific focus on customer service and the maintenance of buses. I wish to take this opportunity to remind members and officials to turn off their cell phones or place same on silent, and I will do the same with mine. This hearing, of course, is being broadcast live on the Parliamentary channel and also on Parliament Radio 105.5 FM and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. I would like to welcome members of the viewing and listening audience and to advise that they may send comments via email at parl101@ttparliament.org, on our Facebook page at facebook.com/ttparliament, or on Twitter at ttparliament. I want to take this opportunity to welcome the officials of the Public Transport Service Corporation and invite them to introduce yourselves.
Good morning, Chairman, Vice Chairman, members, administrative staff, members of the public. My name is Edwin Gooding, and I'm the Chairman of the PTSC. And on my immediate right is Mr. Ronald Ford, the General Manager. And to my extreme right is Mr. Brian Wannett, the Deputy General Manager, Operations. And to his left, Ms. Roxanne Cox, the Deputy General Manager, Finance. To my immediate left is Mr. Garth Alexander, Deputy General Manager, Engineering. And to my extreme left, Mr. Carlos Zapata, the Workshop Manager. These people, including myself, form the team that will be responding to your questions and providing any clarification you may need during the process.
Thank you, Chairman. Let me introduce myself. My name is Stephen Crease. I'm chairman of this committee and an independent senator. And I will allow members of the committee present to introduce themselves, starting on my extreme left.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Morning, everyone. Welcome again. Darrell Smith, member.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And good morning, Wade Mark, member.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rushton Parry, Vice Chairman, member.
Okay. The objectives of this inquiry are as follows: to understand the current state of the public bus service in Trinidad and Tobago, to assess the effectiveness and adequacy of existing systems and policies aimed at providing efficient bus service to the public, and to determine the challenges PTSC faces with respect to the maintenance of buses. Now, as you're all aware, you were here before, and the thrust of the inquiry today is with particular focus on these customer service issues with regard to our disadvantaged or disabled communities. I want to take this opportunity to acknowledge receipts of submissions from the National Council of Parent Teachers Association, the National Center for Persons with Disabilities, the Disabled Peoples International, the Voice of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing of Trinidad and Tobago, and the Association of Maxi Taxi Associations, in response to the committee's requests for written responses. I would now ask the chairman to make some brief opening comments, and we would expect that the General Manager, Mr. Ronald Ford, would follow thereafter. So, Chairman, Mr. Edwin Gooding.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning again. This morning we're here prepared to respond to the questions that you may have. And just a few opening remarks with respect to the present state of the corporation, which I think will have a direct bearing on the performance and what you will hear coming out of the session. And that is, the corporation at this point in time is operating with a fleet that is far fewer than the requirement. As a matter of fact, right now we have just over 340 buses on the record, of which we operate just over 200 buses on a daily basis. That in itself will tell you that we are not able to satisfy all the needs of our commuters. We operate just over 160 routes. About 100 of those are rural routes, and we are now operating just around 70 of those routes. A direct bearing or direct outcome of that will be the quality of service that we provide. There will also be a direct bearing on the ability of the corporation to maintain that fleet. It means that we do not have sufficient numbers of buses so that we can have a proper maintenance system. So for argument's sake, we have moved from 170 buses run out, which we call the daily run out. We are now up to just over 208, 209 buses in our run out. But that means that each day we have another, I would say, approximately 40 to 50 buses that come in all our depots for repairs. Obviously, we have to respond to that. We are very mindful that we need to take our game up. That will come with our development plan, which will consist of a short-term plan to acquire a number of buses. But the end game of the kind of relief and the kind of service that we'd want to provide is not something that is going to happen in the immediate term. But we are working feverishly to provide the best service possible with the buses that we do have available. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman, for the kind invitation. Members of the committee, members of the different representatives of the groups gathered here, and members of my team. I'm very, very grateful. We are always grateful, Chairman, for the opportunity to report to the national community about the public. We know the importance of the service to the national community in terms of getting people to and from. And I can assure that we at the PTSC are doing the best that we can with the limited resources that we have at this time. As the chairman said just now, we are in need of resources. The bus fleet is an aged fleet. The average age of the fleet is about 12 years as compared with international benchmark of 8 years. And also, there's a proliferation of makes and models of buses that makes it very hard for the PTSC to really home in on the maintenance of the fleet. But we are trying assiduously to get it right. And as Chairman mentioned, we are in the process of developing a development plan, a long-term development plan for the PTSC. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, welcome and thank you for coming again. I know we met with you all in December, on the 19th, and we discussed some other issues, and it was requested that you all come to do two important aspects of this government: customer service and maintenance. As Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs, I could relate to that with the maintenance of $3 billion in facilities that we have and growing every year. So I know how important it is with maintenance. Mr. Chairman and General Manager, just wanted to touch on a few things that you said in your opening statement. The 40 to 50 buses are coming to repair. You didn't say the time frame. Is that daily, weekly, monthly? I didn't hear which part that was. And you spoke about the age of the buses being an average of 12 years and the industry standard benchmark being 8. Who you all usually, in each industry, there's a standard that everybody, a flag bearer, which sets a tone with regards to whatever it is. We look at Australia and China and Cuba for sport for different capacities. In terms of bus and transport with regards to that, who worldwide do you all look at in terms of having the benchmark for maintenance. And what is the lifespan that you put to a bus? You know, it says 12 years, that is 8, but what is the overall lifespan? If you could just answer those 3 questions off the bat from what you said.
Thank you, Member. I would just take the first question, which is the 50 buses, which I said is an approximate figure, would represent buses that come in for repairs, routine maintenance, repairs at our various depots, and that's on a daily basis.
Honorable Member, when I said 12 years is the average age of the fleet. The oldest bus in the PTSC fleet could be 26 years old. The oldest bus is 26 years. The average life of a bus is about 8 years of a bus, 8 years, the life expectancy. Right? The youngest bus in the fleet is 3 years. Right? So we received 35 CNG buses in November 2014. Right? So that the span of the fleet is between 26 years and 3 years. But the average life of the age of the fleet is 12 years, as compared to the international benchmark of 8 years. Yeah. We also have a multiplicity of makes and models of buses. We have PTSC has about 26 makes and models of buses, as compared to Jamaica, right? Jamaica has 50. The make to model ratio of Jamaica is 50 to 1. The make to model ratio for Barbados is 33 to 1. Los Angeles Metro Bus Company is 224 to 1. Right? So for one model of bus or make, they have 224 buses. PTSC has 15 to 1. It's 15 to 1. So
one will think that the smaller branding is easier and more economical to maintain rather than 221 as Los Angeles. So you're all agreeing with that the less brands that you have to deal with, it'd be easier in terms of stocking and so on.
Yeah, it lends to efficiencies, it lends to proper procurement procedures, inventory management, all these things. Because when you have to access parts from all geographical locations of the world, right? And it uses up your working capital also. That could be focused on other issues.
But your procurement policy, does that hinder to that? Does that hinge to, in terms of you having a cap with how much different brands could procure from? Is there any law, regulation, or policy with that?
Well, we have to procure from the manufacturers of the parts of the buses that we have, and from the location from which the buses came. But there's a cabinet approved a bus rationalization plan in 2010, 2009, right? That recommends that the PTSC get the fleet down to 4 makes and models, right? As compared to Jamaica. Jamaica has 4, Barbados has 6 makes and models, right? It also recommends that the PTSC fleet should be increased in the next 5 years to 500 buses, 75 articulated or bi-articulated buses, 275 medium buses, and 150 minibuses. That's the recommendation of the bus rationalization plan that was approved by the then cabinet.
But for over what period they said that?
Over a 5-year period.
5 years. The last question I asked was, who do you all look as the benchmark in terms of bus transportation worldwide? Maintenance, customer service, quality of service, timing, and so on.
When we research, PTSC is a member of APTA, the American Public Transport Association, right? Where we attend their seminars and that sort of thing, and we look at their standards, right? We also interact with a number of bus companies and research a number of bus companies globally. We look at the Singapore Bus Company, which is a very efficient model. We look at the American standards, we look at British standards, and also our partners in the Caribbean to be able to set the standards that we want to get to.
Well, last question. And where do we rank Caribbean-wise with this APTA in terms of Trinidad compared to the other islands in terms of quality in these?
We're lagging behind our Caribbean partners, yeah.
Thank you. I have a very broad question here, and anyone on the panel there probably could answer. What is PTSC's policy and strategy towards dealing with our physically challenged citizens in terms of your operation? What is the broad policy and strategy in dealing with it?
The PTSC recognizes the need for public transport by that client group, and over time, and since 2012, the PTSC launched a separate service that caters for that client group, introducing 24 buses into all of its depots, including Tobago, and most recently, as recent as January 2017, we established a location where we operate out of Rio Claro as well. So we have been, at the PTSC, providing that client group with specialized transport.
Are you satisfied that there are enough of those buses to service the demand that you're having right now?
No, we at the PTSC, we are not satisfied. In fact, we have a number of requests that come to us on a daily basis. We have a database with requests that we have not been able to satisfy with the existing fleet.
What measures specifically is PTSC putting in place to deal with this particular requirement, to satisfy that need?
The PTSC at the management and board level, we are looking at the question of expanding that system, which would include the need to get additional fleet of buses.
Chairman, if I may, also with each of the new buses that we are acquiring, they will be fitted with the equipment to transport the differently abled people. So all our buses, universal, we call them universal buses, so that from here on, as we acquire new buses, they will be fitted to assist in that area. So we will not only have specialized buses, most of our buses would have the facility to accommodate the differently abled.
Now, based on some of the feedback we got from comments coming out from the public and the various associations, it was indicated that the current El Damo buses are particularly uncomfortable and unsuited for the average individual body structure. Has this ever been brought to the attention of the PTSC through its customer service mechanisms in dealing with that particular clientele?
Remember, yes, we have received that sort of feedback. We have been receiving complaints from some of the clients that travel on those buses. So we are aware that at times there is the report of an uncomfortable ride on some of those buses.
There's also an issue around security that was brought to our attention in terms of security on board some of these buses. I understand there are marshals on some of those buses, based on the feedback we got. Is there any reason why some buses have security on board and some does not have security? Any sort of security mechanisms?
Honorable Member, the fact is that we have introduced on some of the buses the persons that we would have had within our employ as property protection officers.
Okay.
And they've provided excellent support in that regard. We don't have sufficient to take it around the entire system, but what we had hoped we would have gotten some sort of support over time was the provision of what we like to call a paratransit assistant to be on those buses.
How far we are away from those things being implemented?
When the El Damo service was first introduced in partnership with the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, it was the understanding that the Ministry of Family Services, of Social Development and Family Services would have provided the caregivers to be on the buses. Right? That never materialized. But what the PTSC did, we utilized some of our personnel to be on the buses to give that kind of assistance to the differently abled. But this requires specialist people to be on board the buses in a very short timeline and want access service. As Mr. Mann said before, the service is oversubscribed. Right? There's a lot of people demanding service from the 24 buses. So it's a definite need to expand the fleet and also to get into universal buses that the differently able could be incorporated into the normal buses that are on the bus route.
Good morning, members of the panel. Name is Senator De Freitas. I just apologize for coming in late. Mark, would you say the punctuality of the PTSC or the buses throughout Trinidad and Tobago, where would you say it's at right now? And do you all have any programs in place to sort of increase that or to, make it better?
Honorable Member, I would simply describe the punctuality of the PTSC as fair. And simply because we don't, as Chairman and General Manager indicated, we just don't have the requisite resources at this time to maintain all our schedules on the various routes throughout Trinidad and Tobago as well. I dare say, though, there are some aspects of our services, if we were to disaggregate, we do pretty well on those services. We maintain the schedules. We maintain a very high on-time percentage on those routes.
Given the advancement I've seen in other countries, the use of technology to sort of aid in terms of punctuality. Now, in some other countries, it may not be that the buses are on time every single time, but what they would have is things like an app where people can sign on and actually see where the bus is or how far it is or how long until it gets to a particular location. Are you all looking into anything like that moving forward for Trinidad and Tobago?
Yes, as I said earlier, there's a developmental plan that is in train that will take us over the next 5 years, which will use of technology for the proper management of the buses in terms of maintenance, in terms of knowing where our buses are, in terms of sharing that information with our commuters. Because on many occasions we have people just waiting and they don't have any idea as to how long the bus is going to be coming, so that at least they could make alternative arrangements. So the plan, and at some point during this session, I hope the General Manager would be able to quickly go through the steps that we propose to take to move from where we are now to improve our timely service, our scheduling, and so on. So during the course of this session, I would like the General Manager to perhaps just tell you how we're going to roll out that 5-year development plan.
In terms of technology, the PTSC currently has all PTSC buses on a GPS network. So we have they're all fitted with GPS, and there's a command center that could tell us where each bus is at in real time. We also get reports on a daily basis in terms of idle time, if the buses are being left idle without shutting off. In terms of speed, right, the speed the drivers are driving at, right? We could monitor each driver in real time in terms of the speed they're driving at to make sure that they adhere into the regulations of the road, right? We are in the process as we speak of going through the process of acquiring a new GPS system, because the current GPS contract comes to an end in July of 2017. We are hoping with this new GPS system that we will acquire the infrastructure to look at electronic ticketing, electronic counting, electronic scheduling, public information display system, PIDs. So all these different electronic apps will be available. We are also looking at having the app on a phone, so a person could just go to the phone and see exactly where the bus is at, if it's on schedule, if it's not on schedule. PTSC is also in the process of implementing and rolling out as we speak a biometric system, time and attendance biometric system. They will be able to manage time and attendance in the PTSC to make sure that everybody gets to work on time and they give the best and stay on the job. And these are some of the things we're looking at. We're also looking at acquiring a fleet management system to manage the entire operations of the maintenance of the fleet. So we could maintain our PM schedule, planned maintenance schedules, to make sure they're on time in keeping with the manufacturer's specifications, right? In terms of the consumption of spares, to make sure that we don't run out of spares, we keep our levels of spares and that sort of thing. So a lot of work is going into, as we speak, into the technology for the PTSC.
Chairman, I just want to, however, just bear in mind that all these developments that will be taking place, one of the key things that must be put in place that we have to solve the problem of is buses. We need to get more buses in place to enable us to deliver on servicing the number of routes that we have to service. So the technology is fine and we need to put technology in place, but we need to get those buses that are missing right now from our fleet. And that is key to the solution, to our long-term solution.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The last census, population census, revealed a population of 52,243 rather, physically challenged people in the Republic of TNT. I would like to ask the PTSC team, what kind of services are provided by the PTSC for physically challenged school children who would have to utilize those services on a daily basis? You don't have on your current fleet facilities to accommodate them. The special service fleet that you mentioned is limited. And then you have the maxi taxi arrangement via the Ministry of Education. So could you tell us how many school children who are physically challenged that you accommodate on a daily basis, and through what systems? PTSC, the special services, and or the maxi taxi. Could you explain that to us, how it is done, the numbers involved, and the services that are utilized?
Honorable Member, I believe we would have to provide our disaggregation to the committee. At this time, we don't have that disaggregation, but just to say as well that we, in fact, for the client group, which are for persons with disabilities, we, in fact, provide direct services to children at their homes and take them to various institutions for their education. In as much as we do that, we have students who can walk on buses, but they might have a disability, so they access our regular services as well. With respect to the school maxis, they essentially cater for what I would want to describe able-bodied students and persons who can access the maxis in the various communities.
So, the bus rationalization plan that you mentioned earlier, and you said that was a decision of cabinet in 2009 to bring down the number of models or brands from the scandalous 200 you mentioned, or thereabout, to 4. What has happened since that cabinet note? How many new buses have we acquired since that cabinet decision? And have we been able to stick to that decision between 2009 to the present time as it relates to the number of models that PTSC should at least seek to come down to? And that is 4. And you mentioned Barbados has 6 and Jamaica has 4. Where are we with that?
I'm extremely unhappy to report, Honorable Member, that we are still with the 26 since that time. There was 35 buses bought after that report. And while PTSC is hell-bent on rationalizing the fleet, because we know how important it is to us to be able to deliver efficiencies and quality service, PTSC was in the process of acquiring those 35 buses. That was taken away from the PTSC and given to NIBDEC. Right? NIBDEC, in that process, added an additional brand to us. Right? So they added an additional brand. They brought in the Sunlong brand, which we didn't have before. So while we were clamoring and campaigning for the rationalization of the bus fleet, an additional brand 35 additional buses came to an X brand, right? So we are in the process as we speak right now of acquiring 35 buses again, right? That process is ongoing. In terms of the evaluation is completed, a bus company is recommended, right? It's being reviewed by the Ministry of Works and Transport as we speak. But in that process, what we did, we did a selective tendering process with the approval of the ministry and the cabinet. In terms of, we selected 6 companies with the largest percentage of buses currently existing in the fleet, and asked these 6 companies to tender, so we don't get a new brand coming in. And as we go forward, that will be the process.
All right. Would you be able to provide the chairman with a copy of this rationalization plan that you mentioned via this cabinet decision of 2009? And secondly, could you tell us how long this development plan that was mentioned earlier will take to be completed, so that in trying to establish a roadmap for the PTSC over the next 10, 12 years or 8 years, that is crucial to have. How soon would you be able to complete that development plan?
A draft of the development plan that the chairman spoke about was submitted at the last board meeting last month. Well, we have asked the board to give us a couple of weeks. And at the board meeting of this June month, the first draft, the first final draft, will be submitted to the board at the board's meeting at the end of this month.
5 years.
Yeah.
All right. Before
Yeah, 5
Mr.
years.
Darrell Smith asks, let me just ask one more question before. Mr. Gooden, you did indicate to us very early that we have about, well, you said over 340 buses in the system. I don't know what is the actual number. Do we have an actual number? Is it 340? Is it 440? Is it 500? What is the total fleet that you have available? Not those buses that are rolling out every day, which you claim is just about 200 operating. What is your total fleet? I'll come into something.
The total fleet is 369 buses.
All right, 369. And right now, in operation, is about 200.
We have a daily runout of just over, say, 209 at last count on Friday.
209. Now we're talking about 160 buses that might be in the, I don't know, they have been put to sleep. I do not know what is taking place. But you were indicating to us that even with the 200 buses that are running, and if I got you correctly, on a daily basis, you have 40 to 50 of them coming into various terminals for repairs. That is out of the existing fleet of 200, am I right?
No, you have 209 as at Friday running out. But on a daily basis, buses will be coming in and buses will be repaired and going back out to keep us at around 200, 209.
Okay. Now, what is happening to those 160 buses? Have you taken a decision to have these buses and so on, to dispose of these buses? What percentage of those buses can be repaired, rehabilitated, and bring back onto the roads of our country? Or is it just a question that you have a very poor, weak system of maintenance, and you need to pay attention to your maintenance division and the kind of personnel? Is it you have a shortage of technicians to repair these buses? Is it that we have a shortage of spare parts available to those buses so that they can be repaired? What is the situation with those 160 buses Because, Mr. Gooden, you did tell to reduce the number of routes that you service. So citizens are suffering, including, most importantly, the physically challenged. So what are we doing to bring those 160 buses back into service? And how soon can we get those buses back into service? Tell this committee what you require to have so that the chairman can take note. So in our report that we have to generate to send to the Parliament, the minister in question will know that you need more money, you need more employees, you need better maintenance personnel. So we will know, because we want to have the total 369 on the road. And then we could talk about new buses.
Okay, let me just begin by saying that immediately we've identified 50 out of those buses that can be repaired in a short space of time and to bring them back out on the road. That's 50 buses. The other buses are in different stages of this repair and would take a longer while. It would take more replacement parts to be put in place. But to deal with that, I'm going to ask the Deputy General Manager, Engineering, to give us a more detailed response in terms of how we're going to deal with the other buses.
Greetings and good morning. All right, well, the chairman would have spoken about the immediate plan with the 50 buses that we have identified for repairs and rejuvenation to bring back into operation. So we are currently working on that. We are more than 60% completed. We expect to have the remainder completed probably by mid-July, pending the arrival of parts. Just as what the GM said, because of our dispersed fleet and the supply chain that accompanies that, we are waiting parts from different parts of the world. Right? But those have been identified. Assessments are ongoing on these things. So we are moving forward. And that is in the immediate. However, in the long term, what we have done, we have reviewed our PM program, preventive maintenance program, to be more in compliance, as Mr. Ford said, with the OEM specifications. So what we have done, we have gone back and reviewed it. We have changed it up. We are tracking the mileage of the buses now. Critical to that, because if it is we just do time, we may not catch the bus in time in terms of its necessary maintenance program. In addition, when you have a program that is not controlled or not OEM compliant, we now don't have that support to say, okay, identify where the problems originate. I don't want to go too technical into this because I know this is not that kind of forum. However, as I said, we have reviewed the PM program and we are going ahead with that. The repair program, on the other hand, is going to take a lot more time, because what you tend to find, as I said, because of the age of the fleet, you have a number of buses that are obsolete or close to obsolete. So what you're going to find is that parts are hard to come by. We have to get very innovative in dealing with some of these repairs. Our articulated fleet is suffering the most from that, I believe. But again, we are moving forward. We have found some innovative solutions and we are dealing with that going forward. And finally, our entire program has to now be based on a sense of planning. We have instituted a serious program of planning and assessment. So we know exactly what each bus requires and what stage of this repair they are in. Right, what we tend to find is that, and this was never a good idea, and we have put a stop to it, which is to get a bus running. If a bus is done waiting for parts, we may remove a part to get the other bus up and running. And what you tend to find, that happens on and on and on until the bus comes to a point of near disrepair. So we have more or less curbed that practice, or we are properly controlling that practice, I should say. So even if we remove a part to get another bus running, we track that properly, make sure the part is reordered and that part is put back on that bus as soon as possible. Now we are at a point as well where some of the buses we need to take them out of the fleet. Some of these buses need to be retired. We can remove actually we have a project going on with that right now, where some of these buses we can remove the reusable parts and have them fitted on the buses that can be repaired and we put back into service. So this is an ongoing process, and we have programs in place to address these things.
Well, Mr. Chair, just tying in, there's a few questions tying into what was said before. You said earlier that you all previously ordered 35 buses through another agency. Are you all doing this 35? That's one question. You can answer it when I finish yours.
Yeah.
We all know of bulk buying.
Yeah.
I know sometimes you want to spread and give everybody a chance, but I'm sure that if you were to look at purchasing, not all 35, but majority in one organization, we could negotiate a little better with regards to that, including parts, right? In terms of what Member Mark was speaking about, the 110 that will be left, I'm seeing, and most members and the public will see that there are a number of what we call party buses out there. In those 110, do you all have auctions or sell buses that are obsolete, and what kind of income and how often is that done? And the last question, I hope you're right, because I'd like the public to know, because we have issues with it, especially now with the Brian Lara Academy. How much of your time and efforts and taxpayers' money is spent on sabotage, but more so vandalized of buses? How much money and time you'll have to spend on the public vandalizing, stealing parts, and of course internal sabotage by you?
Okay. But the first question, the procurement of the 35 buses I spoke about is being done internally by the PTSC, right? It's done by the PTSC. If I can remember all the questions.
Bulk buying, are you all looking at with discounts?
Bulk buying realizes, economies of scale, right? But it's also the availability of the funding to be able to engage in bulk buying, right? Could the economy entertain that at this time, at the state of the economy? The bus rationalization report recommends that to bring the fleet up to 500 buses, that we enter into a master contract, right? So you'll have two suppliers of buses of two different models supplying buses every year, every 2 years. So we don't go out to tender every single time you want to buy buses. You have a one tender. You invite about 5 or 6 bus manufacturers in a master contract, right? And you go through the tender process, right? And you select two brands, right? And every year or every 2 years, they will supply the PTSC with X amount of buses. So this manufacturer will know that this year I supply 50 buses, the next manufacturer in the next 2 years I supply 50. And it goes like that, right? But that is a system that we're also looking at to get cabinet approval for that proposal, right? Yeah.
The other two questions was the minus 50 that he said they're going to repair. There's 110 left.
Yeah.
So we see a number of old buses doing these excursions. Do you all sell? Do you have auctions? And how much kind of revenue we receive from that?
No, we it was a policy of the board, not this board, but some boards way back, not to sell the PTSC buses because it ends up in competition with the PTSC. So if you come on a Sunday morning or Saturday morning by the lighthouse, PTSC buses are inside the compound, and there's party buses lined the whole street. So they compete with the PTSC. So a decision was taken not to engage in that process of selling the buses to private entrepreneurs.
So what we're going to do with the 100? So you used to make some revenue from that, clearly prior. So the 110 that we may not use, is it for scrap or for metal?
Yeah, we're looking at different mechanisms. The steel bands apply to the PTSC for chassis, right? So we're in a process of distributing some of the chassis to some of the steel bands to make trailers for the panorama and the carnival.
You all sell them or you all donate or your plant?
Currently we donate.
Well,
we also looking at engaging the Scrap Iron Dealers Association and seeing how best we could realize some revenue from some of the scraps of these buses. And as Mr. Alexander was saying, we have a program ongoing that we're about to start now to harvest parts, right? Reusable parts. So we can harvest these parts from these buses and store them in stores. So when the other buses need them, we have them available for use.
And the final part was sabotage and vandalizing. Do you all have any figures on how much that costs and how often that occurs internally by you all and from the public?
There's some vandalism. There's some pilferage also in terms of even employees on the PTSC. Sometimes become in the morning, a bus is ready on the ready line to go, and when you come to the PTSC and the driver go to start the bus, the battery missing. Right? So we have done a program where we have built cages right, around the batteries and put locks along the batteries to try and protect the batteries. But we have engaged in a program now of installing surveillance cameras at the PTSC. We started in Port of Spain, again with a command center, so we can monitor all the activities on a 24-hour basis at the PTSC.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to come back quickly to our physically challenged citizens. Out of the 200 buses that we have in actual operation roll-off on mornings, has PTSC done any type of assessment to see what it's going to cost us to do a bit of retrofitting to get wheelchair ramps and to provide 5 or 10 spaces on these existing buses for our physically challenged citizens? Have any assessment been done in that area?
We have not done any assessment of those buses, but as the chairman was saying, the plan is going forward to procure universal buses, as the globe is doing as we speak, right? Not to isolate the different disabled, but to incorporate them in the everyday activities of the population, right? The world is going that way with universal buses, right? Even coming out of the bus rationalization report, a member of the disabled community was a member of that committee. I sat in that committee also. It was headed by Dr. Tongzen. Yeah, Dr. Tongzen of the University of the West Indies. And she was adamant that the different disabled community does not want to feel isolated, right? They want to be incorporated as dignified citizens of Trinidad and Tobago to move along with the population as they go about their business. And we are committed to procuring universal buses in every procurement process that we engage going forward.
And while I agree with that, in terms of the existing fleet, isn't it reasonable to decide, well, let's look at 10% of the fleet or 20% of the fleet and see what it is going to cost? Because retrofitting can be done, I assume, to at least get the ramp to get a wheelchair up, rip out 2 or 3 rows in the back or in front or somewhere where we can for our physically challenged citizen. My take on it is, while that grass is growing to buy new universal buses, is there something that PTSC can do with the existing fleet, not all at once, but over a period of time, to get these buses retrofitted to accommodate our physically challenged citizens?
Honourable Member, I assure you that we will pursue that idea and that recommendation. And I also inform you that our 30 coaches, right, while they may not be able to take wheelchairs, but people of certain levels of disability, these buses could kneel, the 30 coaches could kneel. So they come down lower, so you could get in without having to come up the high ramp. So our 30 coaches also, they have the kneeling capacity that they could go lower. But we will take you up on the idea of...
Just last question on that particular area. Is our terminals, the bus terminals, are they adequately designed for wheelchair access, wheelchair ramps and so on? Any of our terminals, be it in Tobago, Trinidad, Port of Spain, San Fernando, is there adequate facilities for physically challenged citizens?
It's not as adequate as it should be for our citizens. Most of our depots were adjusted to suit bus operation. They were old train operations facilities, right? And there's an urgent need for us to look at that and going forward. We are in the process of building out new facilities in Tobago at San Cecil, and up to last week Friday we were in Rio Claro, looking at the Rio Claro facility, new Rio Claro facility, and we want to give you the assurance that we will ensure that the different disabled are well accommodated at these 2 facilities, and also look at retrofitting the old facilities with these ramps and those sort of things for the different disabled.
You just answered the question in regards to a new facility in San Cecil, Tobago, and that's exactly where I was going. What I wanted to find out from you is that, given the issues that you have highlighted in regards to management of the service in Trinidad, what issues have you had in relation to managing the service in Tobago? Specifically, what I want to find out now is how many buses are there in Tobago, how many are operational, and what is the demand for the number of buses in Tobago in relation to the number of people that are in Tobago? And if you could give some insight as to how long again before we have a bus terminus in Tobago, that would be great as well.
Well, let me speak to the Tobago facility first. The Tobago facility is well on the way. It's well on the way in terms of we've been very proactive with that facility. I didn't want to let down my mom, being a Tobagonian, and she's dead. I didn't want to let her down in a debt. Right? So I was very proactive in terms of getting that facility going. We have the preliminary designs with Tobago. We've acquired the lease from ETEC for the land in Tobago. We have the preliminary, the costing of the facility in Tobago, right? We have done the draft cabinet note going forward for cabinet to approve the project. And we are hoping that we get funding in the budget in fiscal 17-18 to be able to start the Tobago project, right? Tobago, in terms of the buses in Tobago, Tobago has about 35 buses on its listing. I must say, and I'm very, very heartened to say too, that the Tobago fleet has been very constant in terms of having over 20-something buses on a daily basis within recent times, right? When the chairman came in, Tobago had at one time, I think 2 buses running out. There was one bus, you know. We actually brought those buses down from Tobago on the boat to Trinidad, right? And engaged in a repair program, get the licensing transport commissioner to inspect the buses at the PTSC and put them back on the boat to Tobago, right? And Tobago has maintained a constant run-out of over 20-something buses. We also bought 2 25-seater maxi taxis for the Lansfome area, where we had an accident with one bus and somebody died and that sort of thing. We bought 2 brand new 25-seater maxi taxis that is doing the Lansfome route as we speak. And we have engaged some rental capacity for the Charlottesville, also with 2 25-seater maxi taxis. Yeah. And also in the purchase of the 35 new buses, 15 will be sent to Tobago.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Gooden and Mr. Ford, I don't know if you are aware, but on June the 25th, 2015, the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago ratified the Convention on the Rights of the Persons with Disabilities. We now have to domesticate that in terms of legislation. I would imagine that by now we are in almost 2 years of ratification. And having regard to what Mr. Rush Turnparry asked about those terminal buildings that you have, by now PTSC should have been given a directive, a mandate to begin fitting for purpose these terminals in order to facilitate the physically challenged in our country. And they should not be lining up like ordinary citizens to get bus or to get a bus service. There should be special facilities established at the PTSC to deal with that. I want to ask what measures, what steps are being taken by the PTSC to liaise with the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services and the Ministry of Finance to get the appropriate funding to begin customizing those terminals in order to have them fit for purpose, consistent with our ratification of the convention.
Honorable Member, we take very, very seriously your comments on the ratification of that convention. We are aware of it, and it is part of the plan going forward, right, which we hope to start some work very soon. It's not very extensive work in terms of getting, putting the wheelchair ramps and that sort of thing, those sort of things into the facility, right? So we've taken it very serious, and we are in the process of planning these works, and we will, whenever we come back here, report to the committee on where we are with these works.
We would be holding you to that. Let me just ask another question. My colleague, Darrell Smith, asked about pilferage. we have been informed that you have been experiencing a lot of pilferage. Batteries have been stolen, oil drums with oil for the buses have gone missing. You have a company called Allied Security, and you can tell me and verify if my figures are right. They receive $1 million per month, and they have been receiving that for the last 2 years. And I understand they received that without tender. And I'd like you to verify that for us as well. So you have a so-called private security firm receiving $1 million of taxpayers' money every month. Yet still, you have pilferage on the rise at the PTSC. Yet still, you have just admitted and confessed that you have to take taxpayers' money to buy security cameras so that you can see what is taking place 24 hours a day. So my question is really, why don't you get rid or fire Allied Security? What are they doing? If you have to go and spend monies, and you haven't told us how much you have expended, Mr. Ford, in security cameras. So what is the role and purpose of Allied Security as a private entity, which has been operating here for 2 years almost, we have been informed, without a tender and getting $1 million every month? Could you verify that for us, please?
Honourable Member, I don't think the tenure of Allied is as close as 2 to 2 years. I think it's a much shorter period than that. The Allied has not been paid for the service to date as we speak, because that, how they were engaged, is still before the board of the PTSC for decisions to be made with Allied. The PTSC has subsequently gone for public tender with reference to securing security services for all the facilities in Trinidad and Tobago. The process has been evaluated as we speak, and there will be new service providers at all our facilities in the shortest possible time frame.
So this brings me to the point also of your development plan that you mentioned a short while ago. You mentioned that there's a development plan that is going to come into your board very shortly. I shouldn't say we have been informed that another plan was developed for the PTSC. So I want to know if there's a duplication of work at the PTSC. A strategic plan has been rolled out or has been developed for the PTSC by a gentleman and at a cost of $300,000 or above. So I'm wondering if we are duplicating efforts. You have a person who has received $300,000 to develop a strategic plan which has been submitted to the PTSC. And then you are telling us you're engaged in another development plan. What is going on here? Is there duplication, Mr. Gooden or Mr. Ford? We are at a time where people don't have money we can't even get medicine in the hospital at times. So what is going on in terms of a duplication? We have a scarcity of money. So is it true that an individual by the name of Christopher Lewis has gotten a contract without tender at a cost of $300,000 to develop a strategic plan for the PTSC? And has that plan been submitted to you? And if it has been submitted, Could you make a copy available to this committee? And could you explain to us why are we duplicating efforts? If there's a strategic plan in place, why are we pursuing another development plan along the same lines of the strategic plan? We need some clarification. Please, Mr. Ford.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The two plans are set apart. They're two different plans. One is a strategic plan, one is a development plan. The development plan is being developed by the managers and the senior management of the PTSC. It deals strictly with the development of the PTSC and how we see the PTSC in the future, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. The strategic plan deals with strategy, right, and development of PTSC, the kind of capacity PTSC requires, right, the personnel PTSC requires to drive the PTSC to excellence. It's two different plans, right? The development plan is costing the PTSC no money. It is done by internal managers, right, even on the weekends, even in the night, right? As a matter of fact, I'll be back there when I finish at 4 o'clock this afternoon. I will stay back with some managers and do some work on it, going into the night tonight, right? The cost of the strategic plan, that strategic plan is not complete, right? Again, is a matter that is engaging the attention of the board, right? And it's not complete. The cost of it was never $300,000, right? The proposal was for $250,000 for the plan. The plan was not 1 cent was paid to date until the matters arising of the engagement of the plan are rectified and clarified. So the taxpayers has paid not 1 cent to date for that plan. And until that is rectified, no monies will be paid.
Is that another episode involving persons being asked to do work without tender, without any proper procedures, and as such, the PTSC has taken a decision not to honor these commitments until you get clarification from, as you said, the Attorney General? Now that you have gotten clarification, because I do have a letter here signed by the Attorney General, Stuart Young, indicating to you to go ahead and pay. So that is why I came to the conclusion that you would have paid these monies without proper tender. And that is why I could have asked you whether this gentleman received this $300,000. Now you're saying $250,000. You're saying that the board is now engaging and will make a final determination. When will the board make a final determination on allied security, on this particular strategic plan? And there are several other matters that apparently have been allowed to go through at the PTSC without proper tender. And people have been, and so I want to know, when is the board going to make a final determination on this matter, given the advice given to you in writing? And I have a copy of the letter in my possession, signed by Mr. Stuart Young, as a member of cabinet in the office of the Attorney General, directing the board to proceed with the payments. So I want to know how soon the board will be effecting this decision of the Attorney General.
Chairman, the letter that the honorable member speaks about does not instruct the board to pay. It tells the board that based on the satisfaction of the board and management of the services provided, that the board should consider paying. The board is at the process now where we are discussing with the principals of those contracts, because what is being said is that because these contracts, well, not contracts, but these agreements were put in place without proper procurement, the board would not have gotten the best or the most competitive price. So the board's decision really is, one, to be satisfied that there was value, and then secondly, whether there is room to negotiate, given the fact that we did not have the best or the most competitive price. So we are in the process of that negotiation. I can say that in all the instances we have had some value, But again, the board will, and management will have to determine what that value is, and then we would come to that, that conclusion. But at this point, I want to assure that no payments have been made and that the board was not instructed by the minister to pay.
How many instances you would want to identify fell into this particular framework where people may have entered into an agreement without any competitive bidding? They would have submitted their invoices to the company, the PTSC rather, and because of circumstances, as you rightly said, you believe that, the PTSC didn't get value for its money or for the work done. It was not done competitively. Outside of the two instances I have brought to your attention, that is allied security and this strategic plan, are there other instances that you are aware of that you are also examining to determine, one, whether there was value for money? If bidding, if there was, you might have gotten better value for money, and that you will have to engage in some negotiations to get the best value. Outside of these two, are there other instances that you are engaged in at the moment trying to rectify?
Honorable member, there are 4 such incidents, 2 of which we've spoken about. There are 2 others that are engaging the attention of board and management.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You spoke of development plans. It's not necessarily a policy, right? And again, I want to thank the people who submitted the questions and so on. One is being done internally, as I said. We right now at this Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs, we're doing have the final draft of the sports policy, which we're going to present to the cabinet and be finalizing the youth policy, and that would have had a number of consultations throughout the length and breadth with all the NGBs and so on. Have you all been, and I see some of the people involved here today, and thank you for coming, have you all been consulting with these various groups to get the best plan in terms of the development and strategy moving forward? Also, I know sometimes in our board there are subcommittees, maintenance and customer service, are there subcommittees for that? And if not, which committee did they fall under? And I know for a fact that at the PTSC there's a maintenance department and a customer service department. What are the budgets per annum for those 2 departments? And if you could just let us know and the public know, if you all know by chance, the percentage of the subsidy, because a lot of people tend to forget that your service is heavily subsidized. If you all know, as a board or the management, what is the percentage of subsidy that is given to the country with regards to the service you provide?
Sir, in terms of the, honorable member, in terms of the subcommittee, there is communication and marketing subcommittee of the board of directors. There's also a health and safety subcommittee of the board that look at these various matters, right? And also there's a marketing and communication department that people normally would send their concerns to, right, and have them addressed and that sort of thing. Let me get somebody.
The budgets for the 2 departments, maintenance department and the customer service.
I'll ask the head of finance, sir.
Honorable member, I don't have that information available at this time. I will make it available by the end of the week in writing.
What about in terms of your consulting with the members at the back and with the other stakeholders involved, and have that been occurring with regards to your plans?
Yeah, I remember up to recently we held a stakeholder forum with the differently able community, right here on the waterfront, right, where we met with them and we heard the concerns and the suggestions also, and how we could improve the service right? And the different disabled community was also part of the setting up of the whole Adamo service, right? Yeah, in terms of the model, I think it was the Port of Spain Rotary Club was mandated by cabinet to be part of that whole setup, because they have been providing that service for a number of years. They have different disabled buses also, buses with different disabled also. So they were part of the establishment of the service. And even in the development of the strategic plan that Member Mark spoke about just now, a lot of consultations was done with customers, commuters in Tobago, in Port of Spain, in the East, in San Fernando. We met a lot of stakeholders and to hear their concerns about the service and the demands for better service, right? And those were properly documented. And we using that as a roadmap in terms of moving forward with the service.
Okay, and percentage of subsidy, you'll have any idea of how much, a figure or percentage that your service is subsidized by the government?
On average, for the year to date, our year to date, average subsidy is 77% of our total income.
All right, thank you, John.
Chairman, perhaps you could assist me with this. While Senator De Freitas was speaking, we got quite a few calls out of Tobago. I wonder why. But the first had to do with the question of CNG. What is the program for CNG in Tobago?
We are about to, in collaboration with NGC CNG, the Tobago House of Assembly, and the PTSC, we are about to roll out the use of CNG in Tobago. As a matter of fact, a number of the buses that are, new buses that are coming, that have been assigned to Tobago, will be CNG fuel buses, right? NGC CNG has given us the assurance that they have the mobile capacity to be able to fuel the buses when the buses arrive. We're hoping the buses arrive somewhere in November, December, right? There's also proposals to build a new CNG station opposite the Cove Estate in Tobago, because Cove Estate has CNG. So it's just they've acquired a piece of land across from Cove, and just to take the lines across the road into that station. But when the buses arrive in November, December, we have been given the assurance by NGC CNG, who are the providers of the CNG fuel, that they have the mobile capacity to be able to fuel the buses for us.
Another caller seemed to suggest that there's a disparity between productivity in Trinidad and Tobago. What is your assessment of that in terms of PTSC?
I would like to know where the slant is.
The suggestion here is that productivity is low in Tobago.
Well, I can't contradict myself, because I just said I just praised Tobago for having a very high run of buses over the last months. So I wouldn't want to contradict myself.
The other question is what's the role of NIPDEC with regard to procurement of buses?
NIPDEC did a one-off procurement for the PTSC. There was a one-off that was directed by the then cabinet. But the future procurements are being done internally by the PTSC.
Our YouTube viewers are interested in finding out what is the level of subvention that PTSC now receive, and is it in your active plans to reduce the size of this subvention?
We are very adamant that we need to reduce the dependency on the exchequer, but we also need the support of the directorate in terms of PTSC has not increased the bus fares for the last 26 years, right? It is the lowest public good that you can access in Trinidad and Tobago as we speak. All right, so we need to be able to, for us to realize additional revenues, we also have school children in uniform traveling free, and citizens between the age of 60 and 60 traveling free, right? We receive funding from the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services for citizens 65 and over, but there's no return to the PTSC for that block, and that's a big block, it's a huge block, school children in uniform, and citizens 60 to 65. A lot of them still work also, but they travel free.
The other question we got online relates to payments for the school bus service. Do you all handle that directly, or that's done directly by Ministry of Education?
PTSC handles that directly on behalf of the Ministry of Education, because we manage and implement the program for the Ministry of Education, right? But sometimes when the funds are protracted from coming out of the ministry, right, and PTSC doesn't have the cash flow, sometimes we pay it out of our funds and await the funds. But sometimes when our cash flow is low, we can't do that service.
The suggestion from the writer of this question was that there's tardiness in payment to the maxi taxis. How would you describe the regularity of payment?
The maxi taxis payment is quite regular. As a matter of fact, we started to pay recently using the ACH system and move away from the check system. So with one tab, I could release all the payments to the maxi taxis. Again, I say, when there's good cash flow at the PTSC, we utilize our cash flow to be able to facilitate the facility, to facilitate the maxi taxis, right? If there's no cash flow is low and the payment from the ministry coming forward is protracted, we don't have the capacity to pay. As a matter of fact, we're paying today. As I leave here, I'll go back and release a payment for the maxi taxis.
The next question shifts to the Piaco Airport. The Port of Spain Airport route is only active during early AM and late PM. As the airport is there any move to expand the service?
The airport service is one of our dear services, I must say, Chairman. It's one of our dear services. It's a service that we run every 5 minutes on the hour, throughout the day. Every 5 minutes on the hour, the airport service. It's one of the services that we try to keep a very, very good schedule with the airport service.
Any information as to the volume?
The airport service is heavily patronized. Very, very, people, a matter of fact, a lot of tourists, I'm surprised, a lot of tourists coming into the country know about the service and they come to the PTSC with their luggage, right? And we use buses with undercarriage that could take the luggage and to take them to the airport. A lot of the employees of the airport, if you come to PTSC at 6 o'clock in the morning, like I was there this morning early, a lot of the employees are waiting for the bus to come at 6:05.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to come back on a topic you raised about the facility that you're looking at in terms of the Rio Claro operations. Have you had any conversations with the Ministry of Energy or NGC with regards to the proximity of the natural gas line in terms of hubbing CNG buses in Rio Claro? Because I know we're in very close proximity to one of the main feeds. Any conversation have been in those areas in terms of having CNG bus fleets down at Rio Claro?
As a matter of fact, last week, I think Thursday, the CEO of NGC CNG called me when he realized we were looking to start up the project, right? And he wanted to get some space in there. But I told him the space was so tight that we would not be able to accommodate a CNG plant on the site itself. But he told me that there's a gas station that is to be built out somewhere in the close proximity of the facility, and he would allow engage them in getting a bus lane for the PTSC and also to have the CNG lines installed there, so we'll be able to fill there. Because we want that the PTSC fleet of the future, and that should be the fuel of the future.
Let me ask this just quickly. You mentioned that a visit was made a couple weeks ago. Does the PTSC think it is important that the member of parliament who is representing 33,000 odd people in the constituency, it's important that that person be involved in the conversation with regards to how the bus service is to be laid out and operated in the constituency. Is that something that seems reasonable?
Very reasonable, honorable member, and we will engage you in the future.
Thank you. And the last question on this area is, do you think that the taxpayer can get some value in terms of service if there is consideration for perhaps privatization of certain legs of the runs, especially in some of the rural areas where you have a high maintenance cost on just making the route from San Fernando to service Rio Claro Mayaro, in reference to having a private operation that may be able to service the area perhaps more efficiently as a private operation? Is that something that PTSC has ever considered in terms of part of its strategic planning?
And as part of the service right now as we speak, that model is in place. Right? We service, that's how we service the Charlottesville model.
Okay.
The Charlottesville route, we service the Charlottesville. Heights of a repo, we service it that way. So we are engaging in that model as we speak.
Okay.
Yeah, we're practicing that as we speak.
All right, and just one more before I pass on. A document was laid in Parliament the other day called the National Draft Policy, the 2030 Vision. And based on the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, transportation is a big area. How do we look after our citizens in terms of a few of Goal 1 and 3, I believe? One of the things that I noticed in that documentation, it said that a lot of consultation was done inside of ministries to determine what the indicators for those strategic goals are going to be. As far as you are aware, what has been PTSC's role in the formulation of that document that was laid in Parliament that should be coming to a joint select committee very soon? What has your role as PTSC, as an arm of the Ministry of Transport, been in formulating that policy which was laid?
I can't say I remember. PTSC was part of that. I can't recall.
And the reason that I ask is because further in that document, it stated that the ministries will be involved of driving those policies down to 2030. So I had some concerns about how it was being done compared to how it's done in other regions, more specifically Mexico. And I'm saying that, if this document was prepared with the collaboration of the ministries and the arms of the ministries, then, and you are saying that you are not aware of PTSC's participation in that document, well, then that has serious concerns for me, because clearly what is written in the document is not reflective of what you said in terms of the participation, which I think you all should have been very active in formulating that document, because transportation, urban transportation, security, movement of citizens throughout rural Trinidad, how do you interlink our communities? And I think your participation ought to have been critical in formulating that section of the document. So I'm surprised that you have.
We are also in constant conversation with the Ministry of Works and Transport in terms of the development of public transportation. So that there's a lot of information that's shared between the ministry and the PTSC that could be used, right, in terms of where we want to take it and that sort of thing. And where the ministry sees public transportation and PTSC's role and that sort of thing, that could have been inputted into that document. Yeah.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Signage for those persons who are deaf. Do you think, Mr. Ford or Mr. Gooden, there's enough signage to aid those persons since they communicate by sign language? Do you think that we have adequate signage for them within the PTSC arrangement? And if you don't have adequate signage for the deaf who communicate by signage, not by signage, by sign language rather. How do we intend to address that deficiency?
Well, I would say without any contradiction that we don't have the level of signage that we need to have at the PTSC. And it's a very good point that we need to look at and to improve going forward, right? In terms of the different ways people communicate, right? But in terms of there's a lot of in terms of a person, a lot of our schedules are announced via the microphone.
Yes.
Right? Saying that bus number so and so is coming to this line and that sort of thing, right?
Yes.
We are now in the process of looking at some electronic signs.
Right.
Installing electronic signs that the person who is maybe deaf could look at the electronic sign at every queue, right? And see exactly, well, you're in the right queue. The bus is leaving at this time and that sort of thing. So we're looking at that as we speak right now.
Well, you may be looking at it, which is very good. I would like to know when you feel that you might be able to translate that thinking into reality so that, those tens of thousands or thousands of persons who are deaf, they are currently deaf and they need some support. And I think PTSC could in fact look at taking some urgent action to address this very important matter. And I don't believe that should be a huge expenditure, having regard to what Mr. Gooding has just said. In fact, in your negotiation with Allied Security, you might be able to take over 500,000, and you might be able to use that to buy some signage in that regard. So I hope, Mr. Gooding, you would be very able and capable of negotiating downward so that money could be properly redeployed to deal with urgent matters. I just want to ask you to give that some priority, both in your development plan and in your renegotiation. I just would
just 1 minute, Honourable Member. Even better than that, right? Our young IT technicians have developed an app that is ready to roll, right? They did a showing at the last Marketing and Communication Subcommittee meeting, and it's ready to roll out. We just have to get the monitors, and that system should be in place in the next, I believe, couple of weeks or
that would be great. That would be great for that community. I just want to piggyback on my colleague's question a short while ago about PTSC, CNG in the Rio Claro area, but I'm going into a different direction. Is there a plan by the PTSC to build a terminal in Rio Claro?
There's more than a plan, Honourable Member. The drawings are complete. A contract was awarded to a contractor. A mobilization fee was paid. The reason why the contract did not commence is a steel ban on the site, Cosqueros steel ban. And Cosqueros did not want to relocate from the site. We had negotiations with the Pan Trinbago, Cosqueros, NIPDEC, ongoing. And last week, Friday, we met on the site in Rio Claro. All stakeholders met on the site. And we did come to a conclusion that Cosquero will relocate. A site has been identified for Cosqueros, and the project is about to roll out.
Well, that's very good. I'm very happy to hear that. Another area I wanted to clarify with your good self. The decision came from where not to continue disposing to the public retired PTSC buses? Was that a cabinet decision or was that a PTSC decision?
I will have to research that, Honourable Member, because that decision preceded my tenure at the PTSC.
So when did the PTSC stop disposing of their buses that were retired to the public, and as you said, they were competing I thought that we live in a capitalist economy where the logic that propels this economy is profit. And people, you know, is the base of this market economy. So I would have thought that it is a healthy thing if you have retired buses, that you can sell those buses, get some income, as Mr. Daryl Smith said, and then you have the young entrepreneur who wants to engage in Know Your Country tours, because PTSC certainly would want to focus on its core business. You would welcome that. So I was a bit taken aback when you told us a short while ago that a decision was taken not to continue with that effort. So I want to know who took that decision, when that decision was taken, and if you can make available a copy of whatever note that would have generated that decision, so that we could better understand the rationale for that thinking.
Yes, Honourable Member. When we go back, we'll research the board extracts of that period and see when the decision was taken and what the decision looked like, and we'll provide it for the information of the committee.
And another question about scheduling. Let me go to scheduling. You know, in developed countries, where we always said we want to go to developed country status, but we don't have to reach to 2030 or 2050 to arrive at basic, elementary, rudimentary public service efficiency. Even if you have 160 buses rolling out, or 209, as you said, at any one point in time, do you have a schedule that would say, I haven't traveled a long time on a bus, but I think I must put on my car and live and come and experience that? How often, Mr. Ford, a bus is scheduled to leave the terminus and leaves? In other words, every 10 minutes, every 20 minutes, every 40 minutes? Or how do you compute that decision? By the amount of persons who are lined up to get that bus, as the case may be? Or do you have a time that says every half an hour you move? Or you have time and you have your population combined, and if you don't have the population, you don't go. You wait until an hour later. How is it done in terms of scheduling? I'm trying to understand.
I will ask the Deputy General Manager Operations to take this one.
Honorable Member, we have schedules, we have developed schedules for all of our services that we provide. And in fact, the schedule is based on a number of factors. When we develop those schedules, we look at the length of the route, the travel time, we look at the turnaround time, the necessary population that we serve in those communities. So we have those schedules developed, and we do in fact publish them, and they are available, and the general commuting public, they are fully aware of those schedules. We have published those schedules in the past, and the schedules are in fact posted at each of the locations where we have our platforms in Port of Spain and the depot locations, San Fernando, and the other areas, including Tobago. But I dare indeed say that, and one of our services, and you spoke about you haven't traveled on time for some time, you can experience it. And just to give you an example, one of the well-known or best-kept secret of the PTSC is our service to the Piarco Airport, which runs essentially on time, and our deluxe coach service out of Port of Spain into San Fernando and Port of Spain into Sangre Grande and return. So, you know, those are just some examples I'm giving, Honorable Member.
Right, I have two questions before Mr. Daryl Smith comes in. Could you provide us, well, first of all, what criteria would be utilized by the PTSC management to determine the severing of routes given the reduction in your bus fleet at any one point in time? So like when you were up to 300 buses operating, and you had, for instance, in the rural community, 100 routes, you are now down to only 70. So 30 routes have disappeared because of the reduction in your fleet. I would like to know the routes that have been cut completely off, the names of them. I would also like to know what criteria have been employed by the PTSC in determining which route should be removed, which route should stay, as the case may be. And maybe you could supply that in writing, so we will better understand how this thing is actually done. But could you tell me at the height of your operations in terms of bus fleet? I am just estimating maybe about 300 buses. That might be a height, or maybe above that. You'll have to advise me. How many routes you would have covered if, for instance, you had 300 buses? And now that you only have 209 buses, what is your total number of routes that you are covering at this time? I just wanted to find out what is that.
Honorable Member, we have a total route network of 163 routes throughout Trinidad and Tobago. And essentially, we are just doing about, I know the chairman alluded to the figure early on, but at today's date, we're just doing about 50% of that, which is just around 81 of those routes, which include rural routes. In the total 164 routes, 97 of those are rural by nature. So it's the largest chunk of the service that we need to provide.
Okay. And my final question, Darrell, before you go on. Mr. Gooden, could you supply us, because I don't know if you'll want to give us the information now. If you don't want to give us the information now, and I don't see why you can't give it, but I'm giving you the option. You mentioned that there are 4 sets of organizations, individuals involved in the activities that you were not satisfied with. We did outline 2 of them, and there are 2 others that we have not outlined. Would you want to outline those other 2 for us here, or would you prefer to outline that in writing and give us the names of the organizations involved, exactly what work that they executed, and the value of their invoices, and if you could tell us exactly what you have said in a short while ago, what you intend to do in an effort to get value for money competitively and renegotiate those other 2 as well. Would you want to volunteer the information now to us, or would you want to put it in writing?
Chairman, the 2 companies, one is HR Technologies, and the second one is A Leader Limited.
HR Technology?
Yes.
What is the HR? What is the HR Technology? And what is A Leadership? I don't understand. You want to clarify?
HR Technologies is a HR firm that provides HR human resource services.
Okay.
A Leader is a consulting firm.
A consultant firm.
Yeah.
You have any idea what technology, the group technology would have requested based on the work that they did, as well as A Leadership as well, so that at least you give us an idea, so when you go to negotiate or renegotiate, we would have already have an idea of what is involved.
But the HR Technologies is really providing hiring services and also industrial relations support. And A Leader is a consulting firm that provides like conferences and so on.
And for their services, they would have requested what sum of money for their services during the period that they would have submitted their invoices that you are now reviewing, given the circumstances?
You want to know the quantum of the
The
invoice?
quantum, the value.
The HR technologies would not have been a fixed sum because that will be as avail of.
Okay.
And a leader was, I believe the figure was $60,000.
60,000. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Recently, I saw you all had a very fantastic program that you launched, very innovative, where you all launched Wi-Fi on a few of the buses, which I found was a very innovative, especially as Minister of Youth. Got a lot of feedback from a number of the young people that rollout was fantastic, and it's along the lines of customer service. Have you all been able to expand that? And one of the things that I've heard from some of the younger people who have spoken to us, that some of these buses are fitted with televisions. And if it's going to have any plans to utilize it for advertising or movies or infomercials or government programs where people who are just sitting who may not have a phone or to use the local parlance, Me Too or Me One that may not have Wi-Fi. If you plan to, or even generate some form of income from advertising from that. So just two questions based on the customer service side on that.
Well, the Wi-Fi program on the buses, I think it's about 13 buses that we started the Wi-Fi program with, in collaboration with iGovTT, right? We had a meeting up to last week with iGovTT principals about looking at the expanding the program, as you said. We discussed that last week, and also the sustainability of the buses too on the road. That was one of the concerns also, to make sure that the buses are sustained on the road so that people have access to the service and a wide span of people have access to the service. So we are in discussion right now. We're expanding that Wi-Fi service. Yeah.
On the other side of it, the screens and advertising sales to help offset some of the maintenance costs. Because most of the buses I see have televisions in them, but nothing is on it. Do you have anything planned to utilize those in direct line with the maintenance black hole we may have with financing some of it, but more importantly, customer service side of
and
it?
And again, our advertising providers, we are in discussions with them also in terms of engaging them in advertising on the buses and that sort of thing. Especially the new buses that we're looking at, definitely getting that advertising program going. Yeah.
The other issue that has come up frequently has to do with the ticket booths at the Port of Spain terminal. Are you aware that one of those booths is usually closed? And the problem that occurs for persons with disabilities, because this is the booth that's further in and is normally available for service.
I'm not aware of that, Chairman. We'll have to check and monitor. I'm just asking the head of finance if she was aware, and she's also not aware of it.
Because the complaint we received is that the booth that's closer to the entrance is usually closed. So take a look at that.
We will monitor that.
The other issue that has come up frequently has to do with what is PTSC's policy with regard to recruitment of persons with disabilities.
PTSC, I must say, has a number of people with disability who are employed at the PTSC. Right? There are a number of people with disability who are currently employed at the PTSC, who have worked quite well, who have been incorporated into the system, and are very, very high producers. So I must say PTSC has a very, very open policy with reference to the recruitment of people with disability.
Has any recent land transportation study been conducted by PTSC?
Not in recent times. We are proposing, part of our development plan going forward is is for the development of the national transportation plan, which we think is long overdue, and we feel that this plan should be coming forward in terms of the roles of the different modes of transportation in that plan.
But when was the last one done? You have any idea?
The last one I think was in the last approved plan is very, very dated. I think the last one was done in you can remember, Mr. Manet? The last one was not approved. The last one that was done was not approved. But I can't remember the exact date.
1967, the last one, which wasn't approved.
67, Mr. Manet is telling me. Yeah.
1967. The last plan was in 1967, but it wasn't accepted.
There has been a crying, well, the Americas. There has been a cry, or an outcry, for the PTSC to consider, for some time now, the establishment and designation of a school bus service, specifically designed to target school children, like in the United States, the yellow buses. What are the plans of PTSC insofar as that is concerned, to have in Trinidad and Tobago a specially designated school bus service only for school children, designated only for school children, and managed and run by the PTSC? What are the plans of the PTSC to ensure this? And all this money we pay into and outsourcing to Maxi and this one and that one, that same money could be channeled into a special service by buying special buses. In fact, I understand these countries donate these buses, Canada and the United States and so on. They donate their yellow buses to countries if they so request, and they so make such a request. So has the PTSC been given any consideration to having such a bus service established to deal with school children in this country?
No, Senator Mark, I must say candidly, no. Because we have the services of the over 375 Maxis that are specially contracted to provide the service for school children. There's also a yellow van, a yellow bus maxi taxi that is established also and recognized by the Transport Authority that provide that service also for school children.
I'm happy with the level of safety that these organizations have been able to offer our school children, or are you concerned about the level of safety that these organizations are able to provide to our children who travel on these services? What is the view of the PTSC in terms of safety feature?
The Maxi Taxi service has been in, the Maxi Taxi program has been in service for how long, Mr. Manley?
Since 1991.
Since 1991. I don't think we have had one incident.
We have had very few accidents on the system, but incidents with respect to any impact on any safety issues, those are very not would mention it at all, if any.
Mr. Chairman, let me just ask.
Before you ask, let me just have another. I just want to ask this question to Mr. Ford. There have been many instances and complaints have been coming to that effect, that PTSC, whenever there are delays in their services, particularly to students and to the general public, especially from the lower socioeconomic bracket, that the announcement that are made very late when you have severe delays. And these citizens who are very poor have to try to extract extra funds from their very shallow pockets in order to find alternative transportation. What can be done to address this question when delays occur, whether it's with school maxi taxis or with the PTSC, so that members of the traveling public could get an upfront appreciation so that they can make whatever arrangements that they have to make in advance. I'd like you to clarify that for me.
And the situation you speak about, Honorable Member, does happen from time to time where buses might be coming out from off the ready line and malfunction, right? Or there might not be sufficient run out of buses to meet the demand on a particular day, right? We try, in our best effort to try and inform people who are on the platform, right? Even if we get reports of people being tardy in making the announcements, right? We try our best to correct them and pull them over the coals about because we know it's very important to communicate this to the community, right? The traveling community. But with the introduction of the new technology that we're looking at, the new GPS that we're looking at, where we have things like electronic scheduling, right? PIDs, public information display systems, right? That technology will assist us tremendously in relaying proper and timely information to the commuting public.
Yeah, Mr. Ford, the last time you were here, you indicated that you were thankful to the Minister of Finance at that time for providing some funding for fleet management system. I know we're almost out of time. Could you give us an update on how far along that project is, how far it has reached, and if within perhaps the next 12 months you may be able to report the benefits that we've accomplished from having the system up and running?
The evaluation of those tenders should commence this week, and our decision on a contractor should be taken to the tenders committee and to the board for the board's approval.
Okay, so a solution is already in place. It's just for the execution now.
Well on the way.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I just also bring to Mr. Ford's attention? I don't know if you're aware that there's a bill before the Parliament which has already passed the Senate and is being debated in the other place on Wednesday. It's the motor vehicles and the motor vehicle and road traffic amendment bill 2017. And I want to tell you that there's a suite of traffic violations that are attached in Schedule 9, over 100, I think just about 100. And there are fixed penalties and the merit points system. I know this one would be of interest to the PTSC because I understand you are a habitual violator of this provision. I want to advise you to take measures to ensure that you do not have to fork out $750 every time you are stopped. And that has to do with public service vehicles not having spare tires. I want to warn you that your buses that travel without spare tires, when this becomes law shortly, will be stopped and can be fined $750, and you don't have money. So I want to advise you that you have to ensure that from here on in, you have spare tires on your buses. So if they develop a puncture and they are demobilized and you send your crew, they can just extract, like a private vehicle, the spare. So whereas in the past, you used to get away, as the youth say, you used to get a blind. You no longer will get a blind. That will become law. So I'm bringing it to your attention. So if you have not seen this act or this bill, please acquaint yourself with the provisions therein.
Honorable Member, I thank you immensely for that information.
Okay, I want to thank, unless the chairman and or the general manager would like to make some closing comments.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I just want to, on behalf of the team here and the PTSC, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to come and hear your concerns and respond where we had responses and where we've promised to provide you with information later on, we will do so. But I just want to repeat that our concern as PTSC is really the fact that we are here to provide transportation services to our public, and we have not been doing the best job that we can do. Not through our own fault, but in terms of the resources that we have. But we wish to assure you that we are taking the steps, we have the plans in place, we are liaising with our line minister who understands the problem, and while we may not be able to get all the buses in one shot, that we have a long-term commitment to reach the 500 buses in the shortest possible time. In the meantime, as the GM would have alluded earlier, we have in fact engaged the services of the maxi taxis where we are unable to provide services, especially in the rural areas. And at this point in time, we are engaging with the Maxi Taxi Association to provide services in areas where we feel we should be providing temporary relief until we get our buses up to mark. We are committed to provide the service. And again, when we look at the funding that is available for health, education, and these different things, transportation of our public also ranks very high because of the importance of having a mobile public. And we are working towards that assiduously to ensure that we fulfill the mandate that is given to the PTSC. I know I have the support of management and the staff to deliver that in the shortest possible time. Again, I want to thank you all for the opportunity.
Thank you, Chairman and General Manager and the rest of your team for, making yourselves available and assisting us in our deliberations. I also wish to, at this opportunity to thank representatives from the following entities who had either provided submissions and attended the proceedings this morning. The National Center for Persons with Disabilities, Trinidad and Tobago Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired, the Consortium of Disability Organizations, Transport and Industrial Workers Union, Trinidad and Tobago United Maxi Taxi Association, the National Parent Teachers Association, Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association, and the Trinidad and Tobago Association for Retired Persons. I want to thank all these organizations for the time they took to attend as well as to submit contributions which allowed us to frame the questioning this morning. I also want to take the opportunity to thank the staff who has assisted us, people who've joined us on YouTube, on ParlView, on the radio station. Thanks to all of you for assisting us and ensuring that we are able to carry out our function. So, thank you again. Have a good day. Meeting stands adjourned.
Vasdeo Pandey, 5th Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, serving between 1990